everyone, my name is Aka and welcome to my channel. I have a 3-year-old who's turning 4 next year, and I like my children to start school at the age of 4. So obviously next year she's going to be starting school. But that got me thinking about just how stressful the whole process of finding a school for your child can be. So I decided to make this video to help any parent out there who's trying to figure out which school to send their child to. These are some factors to consider when selecting a child for a school. These are the factors to consider when selecting a school for your child. So number one is, first of all, do you want to send your child to private school or do you want to send them to public school? So in my country, the difference between public school and private school is that a public school is a school that is run and funded by the government, while a private school is a school that is run and funded by a private individual, organization, or entity. So that's the first thing you have to do. You have to figure out, am I sending my child to a public school run by the government or am I sending them to a private one? Sorry, I forgot to close my window, so a truck just drove by and made so much noise. I hope that footage is still usable. Okay, so I'm going to divide this video into 2 parts. So this is going to be factors to consider when selecting a school, a public school for your child, and when selecting a private school for your child. So we'll start with the public school because these are fairly easy. So in my country, education from grades 1 to grade 12 are completely free as of beginning of this year. So any child can just pitch up at school, buy the school uniform, and start learning without any cost to the parents or the guardians. So when we're selecting a school for a child, a public school, the first thing to consider is the distance. How far is this school from your home? If you don't have a vehicle, obviously you need to have a school that is close enough that the child can walk to school, or you can walk them to school and go and pick them up by foot. Or if you have a car, obviously that makes things easier. Even if the school is a little bit further away, you will be able to send your child there. You'll be able to drive your child there and pick them up. Or is there a public transport that is readily available where the child can get onto a bus and go to school? So that's the number one factor, is the distance. The second factor when considering a public school for your child, in my opinion, is the reputation of that school. What reputation does it have? Are the children known to be disciplined, or are they not known to be disciplined? So another factor to consider is, what is the pass rate of the school? Do children generally perform well? Are they successful in terms of the academics, even in terms of just their contribution to society? Oh, a plane is passing. There it goes. All government schools use the same curriculum, so curriculum is not a factor to consider. So in terms of public school, the things you consider are the distance, you consider the reputation, and as well as the pass mark, or the academic achievements that students from that school manage to attain. Now, this is the second part. We're going to be looking at the factors to consider when selecting a private school for a child. So where I live, private schools are run by private people, private organizations and entities, as I had said before, and therefore you are required to pay a tuition fee. So one of the first things to consider when selecting a school for a child is the finances. How much money do you have to spend on tuition fees every year? It will help you narrow down the number of schools to consider. After the cost, obviously, the next thing that I would consider when selecting a school for my child, private school, is the distance. How far away is this school? So if you don't have a vehicle, are you able to transport your child to school every day by a bus? Is public transportation available for you to take your child to school? Does the school have a school bus that perhaps picks children up? Are you able to, do you have the resources to organize a taxi to take your child to school every day and back? So that's number one, the distance. So if you don't have a car, obviously you want a school that's within walking distance, so it's within the proximity of your home. The second factor that I considered when I was selecting a school was, do you want a school that has religious affiliations, or one that is more secular? So by this I mean, there's some some schools that are run by the Muslim community, others that are run by the Christians, others by the Catholics. So what sort of school do you want to take your child to? Or do you want to take your child to a school that does not even consider religion in any aspect of its teaching? That's fine. So if you want a school that has religious links, then obviously that again helps you narrow things down. So in my case, I'm a Christian, so I wanted my child or my children to go to a school that is run by Christians, a school that includes Christian elements in its everyday teachings. The next thing you consider is the curriculum. So what curriculum do you want your child to be exposed to? So there are all these different curricula that your child can participate in. So now it's up to you to decide which one you want your child to go with. Another factor that played a huge role in my decision to select the school that my child goes to was the teaching and the learning style. So the way I raise my children is pretty much a Montessori type of approach to raising them. So I wanted a school that follows a similar approach in teaching and in learning. So I selected the Montessori school for my child because it's more child-centered. So the learning is tailored to each child rather than the traditional way of learning where children are taught the same thing and they're all expected to move at the same pace. I just felt that I wanted him to be in an environment where he can learn things by doing, by experiencing, by seeing, rather than like the more theory-based sort of traditional education. Another factor to consider when selecting a private school for a child is the co-curricular activities that take place in that school. So do you want a school that is just strictly focused on only the academic aspect, or do you want a school that encourages arts and more science and that sort of thing? So this then ties into the next point. When selecting a school, select one that fits with your child's interests. So select a school that fits in with your child's needs and interests. So if you have a child that is more artsy, so you select a school that maybe has a more vigorous arts program. If your child is more into science, so you select a school that is more inclined to science so that it suits your child's needs. Another factor I considered when selecting a school for my child was the amenities that the school has to offer. Is there a library? Is there a swimming pool for the child to learn how to swim? Is there a computer room? That's another thing that I considered when selecting a school for my child. Another thing I considered was the teacher-student ratio. So I wanted, like I said, I have a Montessori approach to raising my children. So I wanted a school that followed the same sort of approach, the Montessori one, and therefore I needed a school that did not have a very high student to child ratio, because Montessori sort of education, it requires a teacher who is very present, a teacher who is attuned to each child's individual needs, and so you need to spend quite some time with each child. So if you have a school which has 60 children, obviously it's impossible for the teacher to give that one-on-one sort of attention to the child. So I needed a school that had a low teacher-student ratio. Another factor I considered was the reputation of the school. What do people say about this school? It's important for you to send your child to a school that has a good reputation, because if you send your child to one that doesn't have a good reputation, it sort of puts them on the back foot, because there'll be certain assumptions of them by other people. Even just as they walk down the road, people can see their uniform and then associate those negative behaviors to your child, and that can affect them. And I can vouch for the impact that this has, because I went to a school that at the time did not have a very good reputation, and each time I was walking down the road, I'd get all these just inappropriate comments from people, because they just assumed that because I went to that school, I also had the behaviors that were expected of someone who goes to that school. So I was very deliberate about choosing a school that has a good reputation, so that my child does not have to suffer that stigma that I was subjected to. The other factor that I considered when selecting my son's school was the security. So in terms of security, first of all, I considered, is my child going to be safe in this school? By safety, I mean mainly it's in terms of bullying. Will my child be subjected to this bullying? If they are, what measures has the school put in place in order to ensure that my child is not subjected to that again? And what measures will be put in place to ensure that this other child does not persist with this sort of behavior? In terms of security, again, another thing is how safe are the premises? Is someone able to just walk in and take my child out of class? Is someone able to walk in with a dangerous weapon and harm my child? So it was a big factor. So in selecting my child's school, I made sure that the school had a proper and secure fence. The factor that I considered when selecting a school for my child was the duration of classes. I contacted some schools that had classes running for little children, little 4-year-olds, running from 8 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And for me, that was just outrageous. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I did not see the need for my child to be at school for that long. I can obviously understand if you're a working mom and you have no one to leave your child with. It's ideal if your child stays longer at school. But for me, that was not something that I wanted. So I needed a school that had reasonable learning hours that fit with our family. So my son's school was from 8 to 12:30, and that was fine for me. Finally, the last thing to consider is the application process. What do you have to do in order to qualify, for your child to qualify to be in this school? What are the processes? Some schools have some very rigorous processes that might be discouraging to some. So if you're not the sort of person who has the willpower to enjoy a long, arduous application process, that will help you eliminate that school. In a nutshell, the factors that I considered when selecting a school for my child was, first of all, do I want to send my child to a public school, to a private school? So in my case, I selected a private school. And then after that, now I asked myself, how much money do I have to spend on tuition fees per year? So the school that I select has to be within my budget. And also, what is the payment structure? Are you allowed to pay in installments? Do they require everything at once? The next one was the distance. How far is the school from my home? Am I able to drive him to school every day? Is there a bus that can take him, or are we able to walk that distance? So in my case, my son's school is a 12-minute drive from my home. So it was a no-brainer, and I have a car, so I'm able to drive him and pick him up every day. The next thing was the religious affiliation that the school has. I made the decision to send my child to a religious school. This school has Christian values, and they impart those values into the child. So I am a Christian, so I wanted my child to be exposed to that aspect of Christianity, not just at home, but also at school. The next thing I considered was the curriculum. So another factor to consider is the teaching and the learning style. Do they use the traditional way of teaching and learning, or do they use the Montessori or other type of learning systems? So based on what you would like your child to be exposed to, you select schools that have that particular learning style. Another factor is the co-curricular activities. What other activities will my child be exposed to while they're at school, apart from just the obvious academic learning? What other programs does the school offer? The other factor is the student-teacher ratio. How many students are there in a class? What sort of attention does your child require? Another factor that I considered is the needs and the interests of my child. What is my child more inclined to? Is he more inclined to the arts, or is he more inclined to sciences? So based on that, again, you eliminate some schools and you keep some on. Another factor is the reputation of the school. What do people say about school, and how would that reputation affect my child? That is something to consider when selecting a school. Another thing is the amenities. What amenities does the school offer? Does it have does it have a library? Does it have a pool, have an art room or a music room? That sort of thing. Another factor is the security. Is my child going to be safe at school? Within the school walls, is my child going to be safe from people outside trying to come in? And finally, the last factor that I considered is the application process. What do I have to do to get my child into this school? So if this process says you have to jump through fiery hoops, retrieve the tooth of a snail, and milk a flying goat in order to be accepted into this school, then obviously, in my case, that's a no for me. Hey, I'm not willing to go to all that trouble just to to get my child into this school. So that's the last factor that I consider. So this is a really short video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you found anything useful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If there's some other things that I missed out in the process of selecting a school for a child, please feel free to leave that in the comment section so other parents can learn. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to like, to subscribe, and to share. I'll see you in my next video.